In the last class, we were discussing about the stages and components of the polymerase chain reaction. Today, we will continue our discussion on the primer design in the PCR reaction. The key to the PCR, it lies in the design of the two oligonucleotide primers. So in PCR, the key factor is about the design of the oligonucleotide primers. The important point that has to be kept in mind is that these primers, when we design the oligonucleotide primers, they should not only be complementary to the sequence flanking the target DNA, but also must not be self-complementary or bind each other so that a dimer is formed. So when the dimer is formed, it prevents the amplification of the target sequence or the DNA. So they should have complementary sequences to the flanking sequences of the target DNA, but they should not have any self-complementary or binding each other, so that they should not form dimers, which if the dimers are formed, that prevent DNA amplification. So this is most important factor or feature to be remembered when we design the primer in the PCR. They also have to be matched in their GC content and have similar annealing temperatures. So usually at a concentration of 1 micromolar. The increasing use of information, that means from the internet and as well as from the sequences which are in the gene databases. So these information, they form the starting point or the source when we start designing the primer and the reaction conditions for any PCR. And nowadays we have a number of software packages such as for example oligoprimers, and these have allowed the process of primer design to be less troublesome. It is also possible to include more than one set of primers in a PCR. If you include more than one set of primers, then that method is called as multiplex PCR. So this is one of the variation of PCR, or that is the basic PCR. There is a possibility to include more than one set of primers, and if you are using more than one set of primer, that method is called as multiplex PCR. So this allows the amplification of more than one product in just single reaction, and it is especially useful in molecular diagnosis of clinical disorders. Right, and it is also possible to design primers with additional sequences at their 5' end, such as restriction endonuclease target sites or promoter sequences. In general, primers are usually designed to be between 20 to 30 bases in length. So this is another important feature. It is best to balance the melting temperature of the primer pair and to have a GC content of 40 to 60%. So a number of factors are best avoided in primer sequences, such as the potential for secondary structure formation, primer complementarity or dimer formation, and runs of purines, pyrimidines, or repetitive motifs. The precise times and temperatures for a PCR may be calculated manually or maybe by computer programs. One of the useful technique which may be adopted in order to amplify the desired product rather than unwanted products is referred to as touchdown PCR. So what happens in touchdown PCR? Here a thermal cycler is programmed to reduce or lower the annealing temperature, that is incrementally, from a value above the expected melting temperature to a value below it. So this probably allows the optimal hybridization of the primers to the target, and thus it leads to amplification of the correct products over any undesired ones. A number of PCR methods have been developed where either one or both of the primers are short and random in sequence. So this gives rise to arbitrary priming in genomic templates. But interesting thing is it may give rise to discrete banding patterns when we analyze it in agarose gel electrophoresis. So in many cases this technique may be used reproducibly to identify a particular organism or species, and we refer this technique as rapid amplification of polymorphic DNA, or in short RAPDS. And this technique has been used successfully in the detection and differentiation of a number of pathogenic strains of bacteria and other organisms. Now if we just try to understand the sensitivity of this reaction, the enormous sensitivity of the PCR system is also one of its main drawbacks. Though it is sensitive, that feature itself becomes the main drawback, for the reason that very large degree of amplification makes the process vulnerable for contamination. So even a trace of foreign DNA, such as that contained in probably the dust particles, that may be amplified to significant quantity or levels, and we may end up with misleading results. So cleanliness is a paramount feature when we carry out a PCR, and a dedicated equipment, and in some cases even a dedicated laboratory or area to pre-PCR stages and post-PCR stages are being used, because sensitivity, though it is advantage, it by itself is a drawback too. So it is possible that amplified products may also contaminate the PCR, although this may be overcome by UV irradiation to degrade the already amplified products so that they cannot be used as templates. And there are many traditional methods in molecular biology which have been superseded by the PCR, and the application for the technique appears to be unlimited. If you just look at the modifications of the PCR, we see several modifications. for the basic PCR method has been carried out. And these modifications are adapted and developed for the purpose to suit specific applications or to overcome some of the limitations of the basic PCR method. Why we go for modifications is for one potential problem, that is the specificity of the reaction. If mispriming occurs in a PCR due to similarities between the target and non-target DNA, then it is possible to take an aliquot of the products and re-amplify the DNA with primers, internal or 3' to the prime pair used in the original PCR. Now this technique we refer to as nested PCR, which also allows the regions of GC rich sequence to be amplified effectively. Right. So moving on to the applications of the PCR. There are a number of molecular biology methods where the PCR has been used to greater effect. The labeling of gene probes is one such area which we discussed in the previous session, and which has traditionally been undertaken by techniques such as nick translation. And the nature of the PCR make it an ideal method for the gene probe production as well as labeling. And the PCR products may be labeled at the 5' end or even the 3' end. Right. So PCR is essentially a 2' extension reaction, as we know, and it allows the incorporation of nucleotides that have been labeled either radioactively or with a non-radioactive label such as biotin. So the advantage of PCR as a gene probe and labeling system is that it offers great flexibility and may be rapidly produced. Right. So if you just look at the applications of the PCR, we find 7 most important areas where the PCR is routinely used. Number 1, gene expression. Number 2, genotyping. Number 3, cloning. Number 4, mutagenesis. Number 5, methylation. Number 6, sequencing. Number 7, medical, forensic and applied sciences. So these 7 are the key areas where we see the use or the application side of the PCR. With respect to gene expression, there are variations in gene expression among cell types, tissues and organisms at a specific time point, which can be examined by the PCR. So how it is done? In this process, RNA is isolated from the samples of interest, and the messenger RNA is reverse transcribed into the cDNA, that is the complementary DNA. Now the original levels of mRNA can be determined by quantifying the cDNA which is amplified in the PCR. So you have the RNA that is being isolated from the sample of interest, and the mRNA is reverse transcribed into cDNA, then you quantify the cDNA, so that is an indication of the original levels of the mRNA. So this process is also known as reverse transcription PCR or RT-PCR. So this is how you quantify the levels of mRNA with respect to gene expression application. Next, we have endpoint PCR. This may be performed to quantify RNA expression from the intensity of the amplified products in a gel, but it is a semi-quantitative approach. Say for example, the input cDNA is serially diluted and then amplified. So the endpoint yields of the various inputs, that is cDNA. Now this can be visualized on gels, and band intensities are then quantified and normalized. How do you normalize? You normalize with respect to those of housekeeping gene as references. So after normalization, then you estimate the relative expression level of the amplified target. So this is a semi-quantitative approach to quantify the RNA expression. Of course, now we have in recent times the real-time or the qPCR, that is quantitative PCR. Now this real-time or qPCR has replaced the endpoint PCR, and this qPCR or real-time PCR is more reliable, and it gives a quantitative result, an exact quantitative result of the gene expression. Right. Next, we have the genotyping application side. PCR can be used to detect sequence variations in alleles in specific cells or organisms. So this is most important. So if there are any sequence variation in alleles in specific cells or even in organisms, it is possible with the use of PCR. So an example is genotyping of the transgenic mouse, such as knockout and knock-in. Here the primer sets are designed to flank regions of interest and then assess genetic variations based on the presence or absence of an amplicon and or its length. So if there is any variation in the sequence, that can be easily detected. The primer sets are designed to flanking regions of the gene of interest, and then any variations can be detected on agarose gel electrophoresis based on the presence or absence of an amplicon and or its length. Right. Next, we have cloning. PCR is widely used in cloning the DNA fragments of interest, and it is a technique known as PCR cloning. In the direct PCR cloning approach, the desired regions of a DNA source, be it the gDNA, that is genomic DNA, or the complementary DNA, that is cDNA, or even the plasmid DNA, it is amplified and inserted into specifically designed compatible vectors. So what happens in direct PCR cloning? In the direct PCR cloning, the desired region of the DNA source is amplified and it is inserted into specially designed compatible vectors. So alternatively, in indirect method, the primers may be designed with additional nucleotides at their 5' end for further manipulation before insertion. So example for these add-on sequences include restriction sites for cloning via restriction, digestion and ligation. So we have two types or two approaches, that is direct PCR cloning, and the second approach is indirect PCR cloning. And next we have the mutagenesis. It is one of the benefits of PCR cloning it is the ability to introduce desired mutations into the gene of interest via cloning for mutagenesis studies. In site-directed mutagenesis, the PCR primers are designed to incorporate base substitutions, deletions or insertions within a specific sequence. So if you can just see the scheme that is shown here, the primers are directed at a sequence that has already been cloned in a plasmid. Then the PCR product containing the introduced mutation is then self-ligated to regenerate a circular plasmid, and it is used to transform the competent cells. So there are three important considerations for a site-directed mutagenesis experiment. Number one, primer design. Number two, DNA polymerase choice or the choice of the enzyme. Number three, the PCR primers. So these are the three important considerations for the site-directed mutagenesis experiments. Next, we have the methylation. The PCR can be employed to investigate locus-specific methylation. So the method is called methylation specific PCR. So in a method called methylation specific PCR, two primer pairs, they are designed to differentiate the methylation state of the locus of interest. Right. Next we have the applications of PCR with respect to sequencing. PCR is relatively a simple approach for enriching the template DNA for the purpose of sequencing. It's a very simple approach so that you can get the bulk quantity of the target DNA or the template DNA. Because sequencers require, if you provide a good quantity of the target DNA, then sequencing will be much better. So in that case, sometimes you need to amplify. So PCR definitely play an important role, and it is a simple approach to enrich or amplify the template DNA. Now high fidelity PCR is highly recommended for preparation of sequencing templates, for the reason that to maintain DNA sequencing accuracy. Last but not the least is the applications of PCR with respect to medical, forensic and applied sciences. So in addition to basic research, PCR based technologies are used every day in clinical diagnostics, forensic investigations, and as well as agri biotechnology area. So these applications, whether be it in diagnostics or forensic investigations or agri-biotech, these applications, they require reliable performance, high sensitivity and stringent specifications. So thermal cyclers and the reagents which are used in the PCR must be compliant and should be specifically designed. Right. So with this, I'll stop my discussion over here. We have seen the basic principle of the PCR and some of the variations or modifications to the basic method of the PCR and specific applications where the PCR is used, especially in the key 7 areas. So we'll continue our discussion in the next session. Thank you very much.